Welcome. We'll just give it a couple of minutes to see if other people are joining. I think it's a bit tricky, this transition from one Zoom room to another. And if you can have your camera on, that's lovely. If you're in here in this smaller group, I think it's nice to see each other. I don't know why it's on speaker view. Let's put it on gallery view. Give it another minute to see if anyone else wants to join this little foursome. But in the meantime, let me just say, I mean, you clicked on the breakout group, so you know that the question for this breakout discussion is about understanding the challenges and gaps in knowledge that we have that, what would allow us to take the next steps, whether that's in our programming or in our research. What more do we need to know about? What kind of information do we need now? Welcome if you're just joining. If you're able to turn your camera on, that's great. If not, that's also fine. So let's just get started. Just repeating the question for those that just joined, as you will have seen when you clicked on the link, this breakout group is about the gaps in knowledge, the gaps in information, and the challenges that we have in terms of what do we need to know now that will allow us in our programs quite practically to take the next step, or maybe if you're a researcher in your research, what is it that we need to know? So if you have any thoughts, please unmute yourself and let us know.
I can start, Patrick. Great. So I think, from in our region, for example, in UNICEF's West and Central Africa, I think we're quite aware of the various effects of climate change. I mean, at least the most basic ones, the flooding, the lack of water to maintain facilities over time, etc. I think some of the challenges is really trying to figure out, what practically we can do. I mean, we can work with the communities to try to strengthen their capacities, but when we start thinking about, do they need more sophisticated technologies? Do they need better linkages to markets, etc.? All of that seems to be still like a bit of a black box of how we would practically make that happen. We would need to probably add a financing component, particularly if we're looking at, very vulnerable remote communities. I think we have lots of ideas in place, but not very strong examples or evidence available on what, those key initiatives are to really better serve people with climate resilient services, with facilities, and to support behavior change over time. So I think much more practical examples of how things have changed, and if they don't exist, then much more action research in order to continue gathering this evidence.
Yeah, thanks, Jolly-Ann. I think you touched on a really important point there, that there is a bit of a lack of documented evidence about what works and what doesn't. That was kind of the starting point of the frontiers as well. And I like what you said about action research to address that, more action research to address that. Anyone else got any thoughts on gaps and challenges that would help us? If we identified them, that would help us to take the next steps in programming, in research, in whatever way you're engaged in your place. So it's a bit difficult to run a breakout group if no one says anything. So it would be really great even to hear from you why you joined this breakout group. This is very informal, so we're not expecting people to come up with answers. We just really like to hear, depending on where you're placed in terms of the country, in terms of the program, in terms of the role that you're playing, what do you see as the challenges that you're facing to take action, to take the next steps in terms of integrating climate change responses into your sanitation programming?
I can talk.
Yay.
So I wonder, yeah, I guess how much of it is that a lot of the strategies, the technologies, the tools, however much, that stuff may be out there already, that we know there are ways of having flood resilient sanitation. We know, different approaches and community engagement that can apply, with different climate impacts. A lot of those tools are out there already. How much of it really is just kind of plugging things in, and I guess adapting or kind of tailoring to the context, really, that maybe there's not that much, completely writing with a blank slate, but really using what we've got already, and applying it in a different way. Sorry, a little wishy-washy answer, but yeah, I guess about that. Technology-wise, is there really that much we really have to develop from a sanitation side that doesn't exist already? And then for others, can we really just really spend more energy on the locations that are affected by climate impacts, applying those there?
So what do you think, if the technology and the knowledge around the technology and the tools already exist, what is the thing that's lacking in terms of really applying that to this, I don't want to say new context or new challenge, because it's not new for most places, maybe new to practitioners in terms of really giving it attention? What's that missing link, I guess, is what I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I guess the first thought that comes to mind for me would just be one of scale. We have a lot of tools, things in our sector that are often done at a pilot scale, or but really maybe it's just doing more of what we've got already, and sometimes that just takes the engagement with within the local context, whoever the key stakeholders are, kind of working within the overall WASH system to do that. That would be my impression, would be just really scaling we've got.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Anyone else got any thoughts on either what John just shared or what Jolly-Ann mentioned earlier, about what we need, what you need for your particular program or your particular role in WASH to take the next steps in addressing climate change impacts on rural sanitation? What are the things that you're struggling with, or what are the things that you feel you still need to know or you're unsure about? Please feel free to unmute yourself and contribute. Dominic, Timothy, Ruth, Amaka, Daphne.
I'm not sure I have much concretely to contribute. I work for an organization that funds innovation in humanitarian settings. And at the moment, we don't have an explicit focus on climate change impact, and that's something that we're looking to kind of move into, which is why I joined this Breakout Group. So I'm more looking for inspiration, any good kind of knowledge sources on how climate change is impacting WASH responses, particularly in humanitarian settings, would be great. But yeah, no, it's interesting to hear that perhaps it's existing technologies being applied at a greater scale or in a new context, or maybe it's ways to assess what responses is needed, like rapid assessment tools or something. I'm not sure.
Thanks, Ruth. It's really interesting. So for you, the knowledge gap is like a big gap of like really trying to figure out where to start with your particular organization.
I'm sure there's information out there. It's just that we have access to yet. But yeah, we're right at the start.
Yeah, I guess what I want to add to that is also, John was talking about the technologies and the tools that we already have. And I guess, one of the things that maybe we've struggled with in the WASH sector, even without looking at climate change, but which is now becoming even more crucial, is the human component, as Ruhel mentioned at the beginning of the session, that, we have technologies, we have tools, we have strategies, but how do we support people in the long term sustainably to have access to those, even after the NGO programs and the donors are gone. And as we know from, many of the WASH projects, even having the right technology is not always a solution that lasts, or a solution that's scalable, as you were saying, John. So I would also encourage us to think about, what's the human and the community and the household aspect of the changes that are needed. And I see Jolly-Ann put in the chat that, Jolly-Ann works for UNICEF West Africa for the regional office. So she's saying many countries in her region are just trying to figure out where to start and how. And so, just what's the first thing that someone might be able to do to adjust the program? And I saw in the main chat, I don't know if you were looking at it, it's a bit difficult to coordinate across these different platforms, but in the main chat that was on the UNC website, there was also a question of like, how do we make this not just climate sensitive? How do we not just respond and mitigate the impacts, but how do we make this transformative? So how do we take this from just being aware of things to creating something that really changes the way we do WASH in the face of climate change? Anyone else got any?
And if I may add something, I think one of I actually joined this group because I was expecting also to learn from different experience, because so far I don't have a lot of experience on, I know, we are facing the challenge with the climate change. We know we can see the impact, but now the thing is to, if we have like an example of different studies that have been done and then show a different way of, addressing the issue of the climate change, the impact of the climate change, different funding, how to showing us a way how to address WASH program, how to change or to adapt our WASH services to what is happening with the climate. Yeah. So any research, anything like that can be also shared, so that we can also learn from that and start working on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Timothy. Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that position of, it's clear that the impacts of climate change are clear and are visible. And now the question is, okay, but what's the first step in the programming? How do we adapt to this knowledge? And you were talking about needing some studies and needing some research. And I think, that's really an area where more effort is needed. I think at the moment, there's not a lot out there that's up to date, that's recent. But as you will have heard, the two countries, Burkina Faso and Laos, are currently undertaking some research to see how the ideas from the frontiers can be put into practice. So I would say watch that space and,
Yeah. Yeah.
What country are you in, Timothy?
Now I'm based in France.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I'm actually from Burkina Faso.
Oh, okay. So you've got the link there.
Yeah, but I'm now based in France, working for Solidarity International. Yeah. Usually, when we say the climate change, I know because before joining Solidarity, I was working in one of the private company and doing some study. And when we want to integrate the impact of the climate change, we in the study we have like the way we do some of the calculation. We try to we change it a bit. We have some of we try to increase. Let's say if we are calculating, for example, the flow we have to increase it, because now with the climate change, we have like more raining, more water, more flooding. Yeah, you know. And usually this is what we do when we start doing some calculation for the infrastructure, you know. But now when I come to this WASH in the humanitarian sector, in development sector, when we are doing, we don't do like a big infrastructure. Usually we are working to do that, some latrines, maybe some, actually we are talking about sanitation here. So we are doing latrines. So I think the issue for us now is to see how do we really, how do we mainstream this approach of this the climate change when we are designing, for example, the infrastructure. This is one thing, because this is also about the infrastructure. And the second thing also is to see how we can, with the community, how we can, what kind of communication we can have in the community, so that we can also change maybe some behavior, or, and be aware of the climate change impacts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, Daphne, did you want to say something in response to that?
I think it's in response to what we've been previously discussed. It's beyond finding the right technology. I would also add it's important to find the real engagement of authorities in the country that we are working in, because that can be real issues even if we find the right technology. In the Burkina Faso case, I would say that there is, even if we are working with the government, we have their engagement, but sometimes we feel that there isn't a real commitment, because they still having sometimes, for example, latrine construction project, which is in the opposite strategy of having a CLTS, for example, that we are trying to promoting. So that's why this kind of studies help us find more evidence to see, okay, this is an approach that is working, and we can do more if we find real engagement, and also try to have more involvement of the private sector, who can see and trying to show the interest that sanitation can be something that the private sector can be interested in. So it's to say that the challenges are on both sides, on the technology side, but also in terms of strategy and policy side. That is one of the keys to succeed, I would say, in the sanitation and linking to climate change, to see to show the impact of the climate change and how we need to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. So that's a good point about the political will and the engagement of the authorities. I've just had a message from the main room saying it's time to come back. So it's been a very quick breakout session. I just want to flag that Jolly-Ann also made a very good point in the chat. So if you want to have a quick look, building on what Timothée was saying. So before we go back, anything else someone wants to quickly throw into the mix?
Just wondering, Petra, whether there's some sort of forum or somewhere where, you know, after this session, as people reflect a bit more and learn, we can find a way to crowdsource, you know, these research and data gaps.
Yeah.
Might be.
I think, I mean, on the Susanna forum, I don't know if people are familiar with that, there's been some discussion. So that's a place to maybe start another thread and share some of these thoughts and questions. And I don't know from the UNC side, I mean, there's the main chat that's there. I don't know what they're doing with that, but I would encourage you to maybe add some of your questions and responses in that main chat window on the page where you access the main session. Thanks very much for your contributions in this little group. And just to let you know that in order to go back to the main room, you have to leave this session. I will close this session and you'll have to go back to the web page where you accessed the main session earlier, and that will take you back to the main room.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.